I remember when the first time I showed a beautiful home, right, in the suburbs to a lovely young couple, might I add. And, it had the dream backyard, open kitchen, perfect for their growing family. But then they saw the property tax bill and they looked at me like I was joking, right? That's how wild the property taxes can be here in Chicago and the surrounding areas, okay? Right, you fall in love with the home and then boom, you get hit with a reality check. But why? Why are the taxes so high? And what do you need to know before you buy? Let's break it down. Property taxes are local taxes paid by the homeowner that fund essential public service like schools, police and fire departments, libraries, and road maintenance, and many more things, okay? But think of it as a membership fee to the neighborhood that you are living in. You own your home, but you're also contributing to everything else that is around. In Illinois, the formula is generally assessed value times the tax rate, and that's going to equal your property tax bill. In Cook County, where Chicago is located, they assess residential property at 10% of its market value, okay? So that assessed value is then multiplied by the local tax rate, which is made up of multiple taxing bodies like school district, park districts, and city services. But here's where things get a little tricky, okay? The tax rate and the assessed value can change every year, okay, depending on the local budgets and needs. And that's just Cook County, okay? So let's break down how the rates vary across nearby counties in Illinois. All right, so now let's look at a map. Now here we go. Here's what we're working with today. We got 4 major counties that are gonna be lining Chicago, okay? First one's gonna be Lake County, right? We got Cook County, right? It's gonna include Chicago. We got DuPage and we got Will County, okay? Now, looking at each county, they're all gonna have different property tax percentages that they're going to tax their homeowners, okay? So the first one here, Cook County, encompassing Chicago, right? That one's going to be around 2.02%, right, of average effective tax rate, right, for homeowners that live in Cook County, all right? So 2.02%. Now, if we go ahead and jump over here to DuPage County, which is directly west of Chicago, right? That one's going to be around 2.11%, right, of effective average tax rate, okay? So that's going to be for DuPage County. Now, if we jump over here to Will County, right, south of Chicago, that one's going to be around 2.41%, right, of their average effective tax rate for homeowners. Now, if we go ahead and look at Lake County, that one's going to be actually the highest in the state, if not one of the highest in the state, right, at 2.74% of their average effective tax rate for the homeowners, okay? So right, the national average, right, around the nation here in the US is around 1.1%. So you're looking at nearly double that, just for living here in Chicago or in Illinois, right? And that's going to be for most areas. Illinois relies heavily on property taxes because the state has a flat income tax, okay? And that provides limited state funding to the local government. So the cities and the counties, what they do is they pass the buck, go ahead and pass it over to the homeowners, right? And they have to pay that. Now, and add to that, right, that massive pension debt, especially for, public employees like police officers, firefighters, and teachers. And now your tax dollars are funding retirement obligations that go back decades. And if that wasn't enough, right, Illinois has more than 6,000 units of local government. More taxing bodies equals more tax levies, which means more money out of your pocket, okay? So it's like death by 1,000 cuts, but to your wallet. But what's the silver lining here, okay? In comparison to other US major cities, Chicago's property taxes are sustainable, okay? However, right, the city's overall cost of living relatively remains competitive, okay? So for instance, right, the median home value here in Chicago is generally lower than other, major cities, let's say like New York or San Francisco, which can offset, right, the higher taxes. Additionally, right, Illinois does not impose a local income tax, okay? So which can further balance
that financial burden for, residents and homeowners. Now, I am not a tax attorney, right? So I would highly suggest contacting your local tax attorney, right, or service, right, if you need, some more help on that. But what does this mean for home buyers and investors? For home buyers, this means that your monthly payment might look affordable in the beginning until you factor in the tax. For investors, okay, high taxes can kill your cash flow, especially if you're relying on thin margins, okay, for rent. All right, so here are some tips that can help you out. Check past tax history. Always check past tax history before you buy. Consider tax exemptions, okay? We'll get into that next. And then budget conservatively in case of future increases. Now, the last one is to choose your neighborhood wisely. Just a small 0.5% difference in tax rate can make a huge impact over time, okay?
Now, there are many ways to manage your property tax burden, and here are my top 3 ways I tell all of my clients. Number 1, exemptions, okay? Apply for the general homestead exemption if your home is your primary residence, okay? Seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities, they may qualify for additional exemptions as well. Number 2, appeal your assessment. If you believe that your property is being overassessed by the county, then you can appeal it. Use comparable sales data, right, to back your claim, of course, but this can lead to a lower tax bill and sometimes it can save you thousands. Number 3 is choose your neighborhood wisely, okay? Some Chicago neighborhoods and nearby suburbs have drastically lower rates, right? Areas like Evergreen Park or Oak Lawn, they may offer more tax-friendly options. And remember, appeals and exemptions can be done every year, okay? It's not a one and done thing.
Despite, right, the higher property taxes, many residents still find Chicago, right, a vibrant culture, diverse job market, and rich amenities, okay? Provide, a quality of life that justifies the expense, okay? So the city's extensive public transportation also, right, is something that people love, right? And world-class dining and entertainment, right? Those options are, like none other anywhere else in the country, okay? So we also have numerous parks, recreations, right, that also contribute to the appeal. So while Chicago's property taxes are significant, right, and they do call for consideration, right, understanding the factors that contribute to them and the rates and exploring available relief options, they can definitely help you make a better informed decision, okay? Now, if you want to know why people are moving to Chicago, check out this video.